ounce of heroin. It's not always heroin, and most likely it's full of fentanyl. That's what we're seeing a big trend in right now. We're getting a lot of fentanyl out of China. It's cheap. It's $2,500 a kilo. It's coming through Mexico. They pad their money that way by not having to put as much heroin. Heroin's expensive to produce and grow. So, and we all know that we've seen that fentanyl is very dangerous to our community, and that's a lot of our opiate problem is based around fentanyl. So what happens is when we get these drugs in, a lot of times we may have bought heroin, we want to know what else is in it. And we also need that information on a preliminary or analysis so that we can even charge the crime. In other words, somebody sells us, a pound of brown sugar. I can't charge you with selling me heroin if it's a pound of brown sugar. So the devices, really from simplest to most complex, is I can take the unknown substance, I can either use one of these instruments to do it. Usually we like to use 2 or 3 of them to confirm what we're seeing. Without getting into the science of it, sometimes you can get information back, how they work, and maybe some of the ones that aren't as accurate as far as knowing everything that's in the substance, you might get a false positive, and then I can confirm that with the positives on the other ones. So, just to show you, another good thing we have is a lot of times we go in places and we find illicit drugs just laying on the floor in bags. If I have to open a bag of fentanyl and I aspirate that, I got about 5 minutes before my heart stops. So if that, and then sometimes if you get enough of it, the Narcan won't bring you back, and we have that happen. So for first responders and for people in the area, it's a safety issue. So just to show this one instrument off the top, this is called a Aragaki. This actually uses what's called Raman Spectrum. It's named after a man that found the technology back in the 1920s. What this does is it fires a laser, without getting too technical, and it basically analyzes a chemical substance, and I can do it right through a bag. So in other words, in the old days, I had to open the bag, cut it open. I had to handle this stuff with gloves or whatever, but there's still the chance that I could be contaminated with it. What you'll see is, basically now, all I have to do is once this warms up, it'll, let's get this one started too. This instrument allows me to just basically put it up against the substance, and you'll see this is one of our evidence bags, and this is a smaller evidence bag. We like to kind of keep, otherwise it'll get all over inside. With this device, I'll shoot it right through the bag, and it'll give me pretty much in about 10 seconds, 15 seconds, it'll give me a result. Now sometimes it'll take it a little bit longer. This is crystal meth, also a huge problem for us right now. This went through the roof coming out of Mexico. We're getting a lot of crystal meth in the city. You used to hear about the one pot, it's very dangerous. People made it in their backyards. That is almost non-existent right now. This is so cheap now. I think fall of last year, we were buying it like $1,200 an ounce. We're now buying it for $350 an ounce. That's how supply and demand has changed into our city and every city across America. It's not just us. So I'm going to arm the laser. Do it so you guys can see it. And right now it'll warm up the laser, and when that little red light comes on, that means it's firing a laser at the substance. Hopefully I got it right on the crystal, and it'll, because sometimes what will happen is if you don't get it exactly on the crystal, it'll shoot through the bag and it'll tell you what the bag's made of. But that's user error, that's not a problem with the instrument. So right now, it's still scanning it. The long tech part of it is it's basically exciting the atoms all the way down to atomic level, and then it reads the results of that. So here you go. In that short of time, methamphetamine. And this is one of our lower end. I don't mean to downplay it, but this is one of the simpler instruments to use.
So that's the first one you would pick up?
What these instruments look for, these lower end ones, the first 3 I'm going to show you, these look for the largest amount of substance that's in the narcotic. So in other words, sometimes what we'll get is drugs will be cut with inert substances, inositol powder for one. It comes from GNC. They cut cocaine and meth with it sometimes. Right. It'll pick up on that, and then it'll say whatever that powder is, because that's the most prevalent. So when that happens, I start moving down the road. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So
each instrument does the same thing. It does it in different ways, and some are more efficient than others. This one here, this is one of our favorite ones. We've been using this a lot. This is an MX980, it's high pressure liquid chromatography. These instruments, when I was in college back in the 90s, I worked in the science lab, and things that did this kind of testing were huge. Like these were entire desks full of this equipment. Now they're handheld. A lot of this technology came out of the military. These also are very handy in finding weapons of mass destruction, chemical warfare type agents, and even explosives.